Good evening, welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, income tax officials search the BBC's Delhi and Mumbai offices. They seized phones and laptops weeks after a massive controversy over the UK national broadcaster's documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the sectarian riots in Gujarat in 2002. The taxmen sealed off the offices for a survey, that's what they called it, linked to alleged diversion of profits and irregularities in transfer pricing involving the BBC. The big question, first the documentary on Modi is blocked, now taxmen knock. Is action against the BBC due process, or is this in fact a witch hunt? Later on the show, ahead of the elections in the Northeast, Amit Shah in an interview says there is realistically no competition for Modi in 2024. This and several other key points, we'll be looking at what Amit Shah said and we'll be debating those remarks, but that's at hour. But first, as far as the BBC is concerned, let's listen in to what the Information and Broadcasting Minister had to say.
इनकम टैक्स विभाग समय समय पर जहां पर अनियमितताएं पाई जाती हैं वहां पर सर्वेस करता है और जब ये सर्वे का काम पूरा होता है तब वो अपना एक प्रेस नोट या प्रेस ब्रीफिंग करके जानकारी देते हैं। तो मुझे लगता है जब ये इनकम टैक्स विभाग का सर्वे पूरा होगा वो जानकारी पूरी आपको डिटेल में दे देंगे।
All right, well, joining us now, Nalini Singh in the studio with me, Lord Meghnath Desai, Sudesh Verma of the BJP with us as well, Adil Singh Boparai of the Congress, and Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India. Nalini, basic question over here, the timing, do you think it's a coincidence that these raids take place now just a couple of days after this documentary was blocked?
No, of course not. It's not a coincidence. That would be extremely naive and too generous to anybody, or to be very weak-minded to say that. You know, I just want to ask you, Vishnu, when a foreign agency does a survey and says that our Honourable Prime Minister is the most popular and beloved leader in the world,
perfectly well.
Well, then the BBC also carries it, but our All India Radio official mouthpiece makes it the lead news.
Right.
So I would like to just say that when the Prime Minister says that criticism is actually nutrition for him, Poshak Ahar, so has the memo not reached the Information Broadcasting Minister, the BJP, etc.? I'm just asking, just these facts, because the Prime Minister says. So I would say it's certainly not, it is not a coincidence. Today, as you and I are sitting here, individuals and companies are answering voluminous questions on FY, financial year 11-12.
Right.
So that is what 11-12 years ago.
Right.
What is the hurry? Even if and I have nothing to say, BBC could have made a mistake in this transfer pricing because there are questions of credit, of loan,
So that's one issue, but the timing is not a coincidence. That's
no,
the bottom
the timing
line.
is certainly not a coincidence.
Sudesh Verma, would you like to respond? And you know, it's one thing to talk about the BBC, but let's look at what the Editors Guild of India has said, and let me quote that they are deeply concerned about IT surveys at the BBC office. Government agencies are being used to intimidate and harass press bodies, right? The IT surveys are in continuation of the government's misuse of agencies. So it's not just the BBC, this is the Editors Guild of India which says this. How would you reply?
Vishnu, one can have an opinion, and that is the beauty of democracy. But the fact remains that to try to get to the timing and try to analyze the timing, are we saying that the BBC is a holy cow, it cannot do anything wrong? The fact of the matter is that for the last 1 year, notices have been served to the BBC by the various authorities, and the authorities thought it fit to investigate. So they're doing their survey about why something went wrong. The BBC here in India operates as a trust. It takes money from various sources. So it has to account for the money. You know that Greenpeace had to leave India. They left India because they could not digest the fact that we were asking them to account for the money they have taken and to obey the law of the land. Amnesty left India. Why? We did not ask them to leave because they didn't want to follow the constitution, the rule of law of this country. So if the BBC wants to do that, if the Congress feels very happy about, trying to undermine its own institutions of bureaucracy, then I'm sorry that the Congress is not doing the right.
I'm just asking you about what journalists who are independent in this country, they represent the Editors Guild of India, have to say They say that this is a trend that is happening which undermines constitutional democracy. We demand the rights of journalists are not undermined. These are voices
Vishnu,
from inside the country.
Vishnu,
and this is the sense that editors are getting. So again, how would you
if you
reply?
allow me to respond.
Yeah.
See, being an independent editor does not give you the authority to speak whatever you want, and then the government will accept that. You see, I have no reason to bat for what the income tax department is doing, and they should come out clean in that. But to link it to say the documentary on Mr. Modi or what the BBC has done is not correct. The BBC has to follow the law of the land, and that's it. And we actually.
So do you believe that these raids are? Do you believe these raids are okay? That these raids need to be done?
No, you see, whenever a business house or a media house is raided, such kind of, tirade is launched against the government. Why? Are we saying that media houses, despite doing something wrong, should not be raided? More than 10,000 of NGOs, they have been asked to account for the money they have received from foreign parts. So they have to account for that. There is no way. You have to follow the law of the land.
Okay, got it.
Doing something.
Got
if
it.
the government is doing something
Got it.
which
Sudeshji,
is
half a sec.
anti-law, then you can tell us, okay, why we are doing it.
Okay, Sudeshji, half a sec. I'll just like to point out the timing before, or the timeline before I go across to Adil Singh Boparai. 17th of January, the documentary is released, India, the Modi Question. 20th of January, it's blocked by India. 1st of January, there is a plea to ban the BBC entirely. It goes to the Supreme Court. That's on the plea is heard on the 3rd of February. On the 10th of February, the Hindu Sena plans to ban the BBC entirely. That is dismissed by the Supreme Court, right? That plea. And on the 14th of February, these IT surveys take place. So Adil Singh Boparai, do you believe it's all linked?
Well, Vishnu, I think it is time in this country that we should not be surprised by such high-handed tactics of the Bharatiya Janata Party. This is a repeat of their fascist playbook. And you and I and other citizens can keep on criticizing such fascist and high-handed tactics, but the fact of the matter is this is water off a duck's back for the BJP. They are demolishing democracy in this country brick by brick. There is no institution left. They have emasculated almost every possible institution in this country. Democracy has become a shell. This is a charade which is going on. And I was surprised at the introductory explanation by the INP minister. He is the same minister who made inflammatory and provocative speeches which led to the 2020 Delhi riots. The fact of the matter is the agencies like the ED, the IT, the CBI have become extensions of the Bharatiya Janata Party. This is a party which wants yes men and absolute conformity. The opposition becomes anti-national. Civil society people, activists become enemies of the state. And journalists, well, they have all sorts of labels for them. So the point today is that they want to muzzle and silence dissent and a quest for accountability in this country. I really want an answer from the BJP. When will they be raiding Adani's? 10 lakh crore rupees of retail investors' public money has been lost because of stock manipulation and fraud. When will they be raiding the Adani's?
Sudeshji, would you want? The point is that your priorities are diluted. Would you like to answer that question?
Vishnu, even after the best attempt by Adil to divert the issue, I would like to focus on the issue. You see, I have a question for Adil. Why did Mrs. Indira Gandhi ban the BBC for 2 years just for depicting India in a bad light? We have not done anything like that. The income tax is just doing a survey, and they have a right to do so. It's the law of the land that should exist, and you should appreciate bureaucrats are not aligned to the BJP or the Congress. They're just doing their duty. So you should be happy about it. Isn't it, rather than smiling and showing that as if, a great thing, something wrong has happened, and you trust the institutions of the country, isn't it? You trust the judiciary. If something wrong happens, you always have other forums of democracy to try your strength.
Okay, one sec, Sudeshji, let him respond before I go to my other panelists.
I just need 30 seconds. That's all what I need. It is all very well to hear this spiel from the BJP, but I just want to remind them that the shoe will be on the other foot. Nobody remains in power forever. Don't get this thought, don't get this arrogance into your head. You will be voted out of power.
All right.
Come with
Okay, so
facts.
that's a larger question. In
I will
fact,
come
that's
with
something
facts.
we'll
Don't come
debate
with
later
rhetoric.
on this program. Both of you, half a second. Lord Bob Blackman with us as well, British MP. Lord Bob Blackman, how do you see what is happening in India presently? Do you believe that this is an effort by the government to sort of trample all over the independent media, in this case the BBC, or do you believe that there's some justification in doing what they're doing?
Well, I can't speak about any justification for why the tax authorities are investigating so-called allegations against the BBC. It's quite right that if they've got questions to ask, then it's quite right that the BBC need to answer those questions in relation to the tax affairs of the individual employees. This is a survey, this is an attempt, I think, by the tax authorities to regularise the position. I'm sure that the documents will be provided, that cooperation will be provided by BBC employees, and the matter will be resolved very quickly. But to tie in the absolutely disgraceful documentary that was broadcast on the BBC in the UK with this is, I think, wrong in principle. The reality is that that was a very shoddy piece of journalism, poorly researched, cast aspersions on both the Indian government and the Indian judicial system, and therefore it should have been far better thought out, and indeed made suggestions as to how modern India is, and of course contained allegations that were refuted by the Supreme Court back from 20 years ago on the Gujarat riots. So you shouldn't conflate the two issues at all.
Do you believe India's reaction was exaggerated, asking for this documentary to be banned in India, petitions being filed by some in the Supreme Court saying that the BBC needs to be thrown out of India? Do you believe that that's a normal reaction in a country which says that it has independent media? To a documentary which
I think the most important thing about
information, which is new.
Well, it didn't. What it did was to take some information, cast aspersions, and without proper evidence, smears against both the Prime Minister and the Indian government. And to me, that is poor, shoddy journalism. What you should be doing as journalists is asking appropriate questions of politicians and those in positions of responsibility.
No, but I'm asking about
and it's right that
the reaction,
those questions are asked and
in India's
answered.
reaction, is it exaggerated or not?
But look,
I accept the point that you're making, and many have made it. That there was shoddy journalism, the line of the documentary was wrong, this, that, and the other. That's debatable, but be that as it may, do you believe India's reaction?
Well, I'm glad you accept that, and I think that's right. No, I think, look, India's reaction is up to India. It's not for me as a UK politician to interfere in the affairs of India, far from it. What I am commenting on is the reaction from the United Kingdom for what the BBC has done. And we have to remember that the BBC is not an arm of the UK government. It's a totally independent organisation, a broadcasting organisation that broadcasts literally all over the world and is funded in order to provide factual information with solid evidence.
Okay.
And I'm afraid that documentary series fell far short of that.
Okay.
Now, it's then for the government of India to decide what it does in relation to an external, remember, a foreign owned organisation wanting to broadcast what they've produced in India. I mean, that's a matter for the Indian government and the Indian authorities. Now, they've decided what they wanted to do, that basically
and you believe that
is a
wasn't
matter
disproportionate?
for them, not for me to comment.
Okay, all right.
No, it's not for me to comment.
All right.
I think the reality is the BBC should not have produced this propaganda in the first place.
Ambassador Sibal, the Congress party today said that the Modi government is scared of criticism. They've condemned what they call intimidation tactics, and that this was something that the IT action, they say, reeks of desperation. How would you respond to that, sir?
No, well, listen. I mean,
half
that's
a second,
up to
sir.
the battle of ideas between.
Sir, I'm asking Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. Ambassador Sibal, go ahead, sir.
Let's go to the basics. Firstly, the foreign press has no right to be in India. They need permission from a foreign government, and the permission can be given and the permission can be withdrawn. Number two, governments have right even to expel journalists, as has happened in the past all over the world, including in India. So this is nothing exceptional. Thirdly, journalists, foreign journalists especially, must not interfere in the domestic politics of another country. And if they do, they are liable to be expelled, and the freedom of expression right cannot be invoked in that regard. Certainly, journalists in India can invoke that right. They have full freedom of action. They can, if they like, as journalists, if they wish to, they can interfere in domestic politics, as happens all the time on our TV channels. But foreign journalists cannot do that. And if they do that, they run the risk of expulsion.
Okay.
In this, government has not expelled the BBC, but it has found that there are chinks in their tax accounts, and they want to investigate that. They have sent notices, I believe, and they have done this raid or survey or whatever it is. And finally, the timing. I think the issue of timing is irrelevant. Government could have taken any step they wish to, even the extreme step of expelling them, but they haven't done that. And they want to probe into what has been a kind of a known practice in the BBC, including in BBC in the UK, of evasion of
All right,
taxes.
Ambassador, half a second. Nalini, would you like to respond? Firstly, does the BBC have the right to be critical of India?
Yes, just as we have the right to be critical of the UK when it is doing, when it does things which affect Indians who are there or who are here adversely.
Second question, don't foreign journalists who live in the world's largest democracy or work in the world's largest democracy have the same democratic rights which Indian journalists have to criticize who we feel need to be criticized?
Absolutely, 100%. And I would just say that this is an extraordinary statement just now that we've heard, that permission can be withdrawn for for some channels or for some media agencies that are going against. If you find a bunch of anti-India propagandists who are running an organization here, be sure that Indians will not watch them, Indians will not believe them. We still have brains over here, we still have hearts. But I would like to say one thing, that we are talking about Indira Gandhi and that she threw out and she did this and that and the other, banned BBC for 2 years. What did we do to Indira Gandhi? We threw her out. We threw the Congress party out. Why do we keep bringing this again and again? And ironically, what happened to the journalist, the BBC journalist that Indira Gandhi banned and got him to be extradited from India? Mark Tully. Mark Tully settled in India, in New Delhi,
citizen.
a few kilometers from here. So I would just say that banning in today's, or even saying we will withdraw permission or we will throw you out, in this day of digital world, and the Prime Minister is so au fait with the
half a
digital
second,
world.
Ambassador, I'll let you come in. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I would just say that this is something which is which is really extraordinary. And also everybody knows that Nirmala Sitharaman ji, the finance minister, has decriminalized income tax offences, which means that she is now saying that except for the extremely heinous offences, that it is decriminalized.
Okay.
So what do you want to go and raid
Ambassador Sibal, you wanted to reply? Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I mean, why are we getting confused? The biggest democracies in the world, the United States and Europe, they have banned all Russian TV channels, all Russian media. What are they afraid of?
But is that a standard we should be following?
No, what do you mean? Why not? If you think we are a democracy, we are a better democracy.
But we are our own democracy. We aren't the democracy of any European
Come on,
country,
let's not
surely.
delude ourselves. Let's not delude ourselves and use this as a tool against the government. The purpose of the BB documentary has been served, to cause divisions not only in the UK but also in India. And you see what the opposition is doing all across, standing up for the BBC and defending the BBC. This is exactly what the BBC wanted, to stoke communal passions in India.
Oh.
The BBC wanted to stoke communal passions in India. They're that empowered, sir.
That's what they did with by
but you are ascribing a motive
around the 2002.
But Ambassador Sibal, you are ascribing a motive to the BBC, right, to stir communal passions in India.
Yes, of course.
So they made a documentary to stir communal passion. They are that powerful an organization that they can stir communal passions in our country, and we are so weak a nation
absolutely.
that we can let that happen.
You've seen the latest review of counter-terrorism review that the British government has done, openly saying that this is what's happening in the UK, that the Muslim communities are being egged on from propaganda from
So
Pakistan.
the BBC is
from local
egging on
Islamist lobbies against India and against Hindus.
Right.
They're
The
saying-
BBC is part of that, sir, because that's what you've just
Yes, BBC is part of an international cabal. It's not
All
only
right.
BBC.
Okay.
Actually-
Okay. I
It's
just
Washington
wanted.
Post, it's the New York Times, it is the Economist, it is the Independent, it is the Open Foundation,
All
it
right.
is the EDEM, it is the all these.
All right. Okay. No, you use the word cabal and you listed various organizations. Adil, would you like to reply to that? The BBC is part of a cabal that targets India. That's the point being mentioned.
Well, I'm quite surprised that it's coming from somebody as erudite as Ambassador Sibal. The fact of the matter is that the BJP wants a timid press. The BJP does not want a vibrant press. It wants a timid press. They want yes men. They don't want criticism of the government. And this is happening. I think, why are we surprised? I have said this ad nauseum. We've said this ad nauseum. Any person who criticizes this government, whether it's an Indian journalist, a foreign journalist, an opposition leader, a civil society activist, he's immediately labeled as an anti-national. This is exactly the fascist playbook. Create a sense that there is a foreign conspiracy against this country. Use that to browbeat and intimidate any person who's opposed to you. Why are we so surprised by all this is happening? And I'm sorry, Mr. Sibal, the BJP is not India.
Well, you are not
India
browbeaten.
is much more. India is much more than the BJP.
No, but you
India
are
is
not
1.4
browbeaten
billion
yourself, the
people.
manner in which you are speaking. Are you browbeaten at all? You're talking about fascism, you're talking
No,
about...
please
all
understand.
kinds. You're
This sends a
abusing-
bad message
you're
globally.
abusing the government and you're getting away with it. Nobody is punishing you for this. You have freedom
I
of
don't want to
expression.
speak over somebody. I don't want to speak over somebody as erudite as Ambassador Sibal. But the fact of the matter today is that this sends a bad message globally. This sends
Look,
a
I have a
message
lot of
that we're
experience
insecure
of
as a
the-
nation. This
I have
sends
a
a
lot of
message
experience of
that
the
in the
BBC.
G20 era, you are browbeating international press. You go after civil society activists. You go after Indian journalists. Do I need to give you the umpteen examples how the government has gone after fact checkers, Mr. Sibal?
But is
Let's
this the
not
subject
delude
of
ourselves.
discussion?
To borrow an expression from your eloquent piece, let
But
us
in-
not delude ourselves.
Is this the subject of discussion today? About what happens to Indian journalists? We are not talking about that. I'm not defending any action.
So I
against
think
you.
this is a discussion about press freedoms in the country, sir, respectfully. But I wanted to go across to Lord Meghnad Desai. Again, the basic question,
Yes.
is it too much, Lord Meghnad Desai, for us to make a link that the timing is no coincidence? The timing on the raids on the BBC today, or the survey, call it whatever you like. Is it linked to the Modi documentary in your belief? Yes or no?
Well, some people will say yes, some people will say no. Let me put it this way. BBC is not liked by the Conservative Party in the UK either. BBC is not liked in India. Now, in a sense, my view is that a lot of fuss is being made about this. From one way, you could say there was a technical breach of the income tax law. That is what the income tax department is saying. It's something about transfer pricing. Okay, that may be so. That may be so. I don't know. That will be. Now, obviously, that becomes part of politics in India, and so one side says, "Oh, this is terrible." Other side says, "BBC is terrible," and so on. I think let us put things in perspective. This is not the end of press freedom in India, nor is the end of democracy in India.
Okay.
Indian democracy has survived Indira Gandhi's emergency, Indira Gandhi and all sorts of other people have done things. So I think my point is very different. My point is that when India is hosting G20,
Yes?
these sorts of news is misinterpreted abroad.
Okay. We'll leave it there. That's
And
an
I
important
think
point.
that
This
a
sort of
little-
news.
And let me finish. Let me finish my sentence. For God's sake.
Carry on, sir,
Okay.
quickly, sir. Yes.
All I was saying was that I would have let this income tax allegation be investigated after G20 was over. Because G20 is very important, and you mustn't introduce small things like this in between, because they may look big.
Okay.
Right?
All right. One second, sir. Let me go across.
I want to basically.
No, but Lord Meghnad Desai, respectfully, I need to ask my other panelists questions as well. So just bear with me, sir, as I try and do that. Adil Boparai, is it your sense? Is it your sense, Adil, that there is a sense that our government believes at this stage that it's not bound to listen to the BJP or the foreign media, to the BBC or to the foreign media, that it's not a question of brazening it out against the BBC or foreign media, that we have arrived in a particular place in the world, India is seen as a global power, and therefore we will do what we think works in our interests. This isn't about how we may or may not have treated the foreign media in the past. Is that the sense that you get about how people think now?
The leader is exhibiting narcissism, and he's exhibiting brazen arrogance. The BJP believes that they can get away with it electorally. And that's exactly the consideration when it goes around doing all this. So therefore, from your platform, on behalf of the Congress party, I urge the citizens of this country that this government is eating into the vitals of our democracy. They have captured every institution. Watchdogs today, unfortunately, and forgive me for using this word, have become lapdogs. Watchdogs of democracy have become lapdogs. It is time that we take stock of this degeneration of our democratic traditions. It may be BBC today, but BBC is just one case. We've had Indian citizens being treated in the most inhumane way for merely asking questions. Cases have been foisted, they've been arrested. Opposition leaders have been labelled as anti-national. Sorry, this is not democracy. I may disagree with Mr. Marma, but that does not make me an anti-national, and vice versa. Let's not lose the tradition of debate in this country. Let us not lose the tradition of democracy in this country. Governments come, governments go. Nobody remains in power forever.
Sudeshji, would you like to?
Lose sight of this.
Sudeshji, would you like to reply to that?
Chance to give an answer to what Adil is saying. You see, you can't expect reasonable debate from the Congress, because all they have is abuses, rhetoric. I would have loved that they would have come with some facts about, BBC in a positive light, because we are discussing. You asked a question, very pertinent question, that has it happened, timing and all that. I'll put another perspective before you. That did the BBC know? Did the BBC know that the Congress, that the government was coming after it? Did the BBC know? That is why it came out with a shoddy journalism, tried to present India in a very bad light. And the government did what it could, because
so you are suggesting, sir, that the BBC was trying to avenge itself against the government of India, knowing that they were going to come against them.
Vishnu, can I complete? So the issue is that you give the benefit of doubt to the BBC, but you are not giving the benefit of doubt to the officials who are doing a great job there. Let them come out with some facts rather than trying to, assign motives, political motives, and not allow them to work. You're not doing justice to that. Let's wait for facts. Even the BBC is not saying what you are saying or what opponent panelists are saying. BBC is saying fine, and that should be the way, isn't it? That is what Mr. Blackman, who came on your TV, just said. The BBC should face it. There's no problem in that. If they come clean, it's fine. The authorities should explain, isn't it?
Nalini?
Well,
the BBC faces a tax case of some sort or the other, presumably. Well, what I found a bit strange is that their journalists' cell phones were taken away, their laptops were taken away. Now, one way of looking at it is that, look, that's procedure. Right? That's the way these quote-unquote surveys take place. But when a journalist, editorial in their responsibilities, has their phone and laptop taken away.
It's like the gun taken away from a Jawan at the border. I would just say, Vishnu, that quite amazing. I feel as if I have lost some credibility today when the Press Freedom Index ranking, India is now 150th out of 180 countries. We are in the 30 worst countries. What happens after this? That is a question, and Mr. Verma sir is saying, say something positive about BBC, maybe it was just slip of the tongue, but let me say something positive. BBC today is investigating or reporting in detail allegations of financial collusion with Boris Johnson, that time Prime Minister, by their own chairman of BBC. So every day they have a unit, a little news story on what happened today. Is that gentleman, Mr. Sharp or whoever he is, going to survive or not because of BBC's own reporting of its own chairman of its board of trustees? So I would say an organization that goes so far, let's say that it did something, and I would definitely not put it beyond some chartered accountants who must be either British or Indian, I have no idea, who have actually done something on the transfer pricing, which is on loan and on credit taken and on the intangibles that you are offering and selling. It could have been. But I'm saying today, we should now acknowledge that, that somebody is trigger happy and it is actually causing a whole lot of damage. Let me say about, to me as a journalist, to me as an Indian citizen, why will I not complain as an Indian citizen? That don't do this when you are talking about when an organization has done some documentaries. BBC is not India, no. How many people would have, but let's say the documentaries were seen by the entire country. The country is running. We are where we were.
In fact, Sudeshji, that's the key point over here. You may have disagreed completely with the documentary. You may have raised questions, and a lot of people have. But then, are we not strong enough a country to actually let people actually see something like this, form their own opinions? Why get into this entire ban issue? Was it really necessary?
Vishnu, I disagree with the proposition that the survey is happening because of the documentary. The documentary was filthy. It could have created problems for people. So it has been banned. It was not based on facts. So it has been banned. That story ends there. But the story of the BBC financial irregularities following the law of the land is continuing for the last 1 year. They have got notices. That is why I am saying that it is quite possible that the BBC knew it and came out with a documentary that tried to malign India, saying, oh Modi, you are trying to do that. You see, this is what we can do to you. But that doesn't matter. You have to play by the rules.
No, but Sudeshji, do you believe once again
if you have not followed,
that the BBC
plays the music?
Sudeshji, can the BBC, a media organization, take on the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy,
they have taken, do you know
who has come into power with a record margin on several elections on the basis of a documentary? And should we as Indians feel so vulnerable in our own country, sir?
No, Vishnu, nobody is vulnerable. We are strong enough, don't worry. But the issue, Vishnu, you are a senior journalist, you know how the BBC operates. It is a trust in India. BBC World Service is a trust in India. Isn't it? It's like an NGO. So it is taking funds. You have to account for that fund, isn't it? You can't hide behind the curtain of journalism. Say that you can do whatever you want. And if that is the law you want, then let us have the law that whatever, anybody will start, they will open a newspaper or a media house or a website and nobody can touch them. You can do whatever you want in this country. Is that
Adil, go ahead.
When is Adani getting raided? Adani can hide behind the mask of nationalism.
No, that is a personal problem, Adil. You sought with them. You were the one who promoted
Adani.
Don't lie on television.
Okay. Laws of market
not Adani and Ambani's. Okay, you are the people who promoted them. Don't try to divert the issue. Don't try to change the goalposts.
Mr. Verma, you're getting agitated.
The debate is on BBC. When the debate was on Adani, we came and debated, isn't it?
No, agencies only exist for those who criticize the government.
What's the agencies, man? I can't help you.
All right, okay.
Agencies don't exist for stock manipulators.
All right,
Gautam Adani getting raided.
Okay, all right. Let's
when is Gautam Adani getting raided? When I
you ask them, why are you asking me? You have a problem with Gautam Adani. Go and talk to them.
Vishnu,
go and talk to them. Very convenient.
1 second, Ambassador Sibal, go ahead.
In the last few weeks, France has banned RT France. Germany has banned RT Germany. Are they less democracies than us? Do they respect less freedom of expression? Why have they done that? Why are we betting so much for BBC? As if this is the gold standard of journalism.
But many suggest that they have been the gold standard of journalism. You may have disagreed with this documentary or this series.
If I would entirely agree with whatever is being said by the Congress spokesman. If the Indian journalists and the Indian press was being treated badly by the government of India and suppressing freedom of expression, I have no quarrel with that. But why are we batting for a foreign organization which is playing politics in this country? And it's so clear from what the Congress spokesman is saying that that strategy has succeeded.
Okay, so batting for okay, let's try and get an answer, sir.
BBC to attack the government and attack India.
Okay, Ambassador, half a second. Let's get an answer to that.
Anti-democratic and all that precisely.
Let's get an answer to that. Why are we, some of us, batting for the BBC, which is a foreign organization?
Vishnu,
we are Indians. We should stop doing that. We should only bat for India and Indian entities.
Because we are Indians, we will bat for the truth, wherever it is coming from, and whether it is foreign lands or our own lands. We are capable of speaking the truth and of taking it on the chin when somebody criticizes us. And therefore, this whole thing about whether there is propaganda from outside, etc., we have thrown out propagandists. We have thrown out those who tried to gouge the media. When Rajiv Gandhi wanted to have his bill, you remember that that time it was called the Rajpath, was full of journalists who said we will not go on it until you withdraw it, and he withdrew the bill. Mrs. Gandhi, as I said, met this end that we threw her out.
Right.
So I'm just saying, what is this extraordinary thing about what we are batting for? I'll tell you what we are batting for, and we will keep doing it, is the truth. And if it is coming today in forms which are not palatable to those in power, so be it. We are a democracy, and we will, at least those of us of our age, will die Democrats in the media. I hope that people of you will also. We will always remain Democrats.
Which means the Supreme Court was lying and the BBC is telling the truth about the riots. Come on.
The Supreme Court was saying that when they went to ban, I want to finish this. When they went to say that ban the BBC, throw it out, the Supreme Court said that this is completely misconceived and threw out the petition. That is what the Supreme Court did.
The government hasn't taken a decision. The Supreme Court, why should it get into this at all?
Well, there was a petition before the Supreme Court. That's why they got into it, sir. There was a petition before the Supreme Court seeking to eject the BBC from India, and they said nothing doing.
Yeah, but that was not the government taking the action. So
why is a petition by somebody else?
You're talking about Supreme Court?
But you are talking about the Supreme Court, sir.
Unnecessarily, Supreme Court is interfering in the executive. There was no need to hear this petition and make remarks because government hasn't taken a decision like that. This is a problem now that is happening in this country.
What, people going to court is a problem, sir?
And the Supreme Court accepting all kinds of petitions,
Oh.
which have no legs at all, unnecessarily wasting the time of the Supreme Court itself. In many cases, this PIL thing is just getting too far.
All right, look, let's leave it over there. Let's hope the law of the land continues, and let's hope that there are judges in this country who give justice, the truthful answer, the truthful justice. Leave it at that. I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. Is the timing coincidental or is it not coincidental? One way or the other, the BBC, one of the largest media organizations in the world, a group which is reported here for several decades. You may agree with their journalism, disagree fundamentally with their journalism, but the question remains, the raids which were conducted today, call them surveys or whatever, is it not linked to the Modi documentary which was blocked in India? The timing, that's what we've been looking at.